The Rotary Lobe Pump portfolio from Alfa Laval comprises of the SRU pump range with its proven performance and reliability, the SX pump range being the optimum choice for ultra-clean processes, and the OptiLobe pump range with a focus on simplicity. This video focuses on the OptiLobe pump range, developed for general applications within the dairy, beverage and food industries. The OptiLobe rotary lobe pump is of conventional design, operating with no internal contacting parts in the pump head. The positive displacement of the OptiLobe pump is provided by non-contacting, contra-rotating tri-lobe rotors within a fully swept pump chamber. For the purpose of this video, we will use horizontally ported pumps throughout, as procedures and internals are the same for vertically ported pumps. Before servicing the pump, make sure to have the following tools. Before dismantling the pump, you should always note the general warnings shown. The pump must never be serviced when hot. The pump and pipework must never be pressurized when the pump is being serviced. Always disconnect the power supply when the pump is being serviced. Remove the rotor case cover screws and pull off the cover. Insert a plastic or wooden block between the two rotors to stop them turning, and using a torque wrench loosen the rotor nuts. Remove the rotor nuts, rotor nut O-rings and plastic or wooden block. Remove the rotors by sliding them towards you away from the shafts. Remove the rotor case cover O-ring and spline sealing O-rings if these are to be replaced. Remove the plastic blanking plugs. Undo and remove the rotor case retention screws. Tap both sides of the rotor case with a soft hammer and remove the rotor case, taking care not to damage the mechanical seals or allow them to drop onto the shafts. To drain the pump lubricant, first place a tray under the canister to collect the waste grease lubricant. Remove the 4 canister retaining screws. Remove the canister from the bearing housing, which is sealed with an O-ring, and allow lubricant to drain. To assist in removal, a suitable lever can be used in the slots provided. Remove the canister O-ring if needed to be renewed. Extract the lip seal from the seal retainer, which has been fixed to the canister by adhesive. It is essential to renew the lip seal prior to assembly. Loosen the bearing nuts with a C-spanner by tapping sharply. To prevent the timing gears from turning, place a soft metal bar in between the gear teeth. Timing gears are fitted with torque locking assemblies. To remove, unscrew the torque locking assembly screws in several stages. Do not fully undo each screw on the first stage of screw removal. Insert the screws into the threaded holes in the assembly flange and gradually tighten in a crossed sequence until the back cone is released. Slide the torque locking assemblies and timing gears off the shafts. Remove the bearing nuts with a C-spanner. The nuts may be a little tight all the way off as they are fitted with thread locking adhesive. Using a soft hammer, gently tap the rear end of each shaft to remove through the front of the bearing housing, supporting each shaft during removal. As the shaft is removed, the rear bearing and bearing housing lip seal will also be removed. Remove the lip seals from the shafts. It is essential to renew the lip seals prior to assembly. Place each shaft vertically in a press with a tool positively located against the front bearing inner ring with rolling elements. Apply pressure to the top of the shaft so that the shaft moves through the bearings. From the bearing housing, tap the outer bearing rings, front and back, and remove shims. Good engineering practice suggests that if the bearings are removed from the shafts for any reason, they should be renewed. When assembling the pump, it is important that care is taken not to damage the shaft surfaces, especially where the mechanical seals, bearings, and lip seals will be located. Ensure all fastenings are tightened to the torque settings as shown in the instruction manual. For rotor clearance information, refer to the instruction manual. Apply an anti-seize compound to the shaft bearing surfaces. Place each shaft vertically in a press and using suitably tooling, fit the front bearing inner ring with rolling elements. Apply an anti-seize compound to the bearing bores in the bearing housing. Press or gently tap the rear bearing outer rings into the rear bearing bores of the bearing housing. Turn the bearing housing over and place one shim of 0.10 mm thickness against the abutment shoulder of each front bearing bore. Press or gently tap the front bearing outer rings into the front bearing bores of the bearing housing. Apply a locking compound to the bearing nut thread on the shafts. Identify the drive and auxiliary shaft positions. Pass each shaft through the front of the bearing housing bore with the rear part of the shaft first, so that the front bearing inner ring with the rolling elements fits into the front bearing outer ring placed in the bearing housing. Hold the shaft in place and slide the rear bearing inner ring with rolling elements over the shaft and into the rear bearing outer ring already in the bearing housing. Fit the bearing nuts onto the shafts using a C-spanner and tighten to remove all axial and radial movement. Rotate the shaft several times to seat the bearings and check rolling torque to the recommended torque value as shown in the instruction manual. Fit the rotor case to the bearing housing and tighten the rotor case retention screws to the recommended torque value. Replace the plastic blanking plugs. Slide rotors onto the shafts with both dimpled rotor master lobes in the 6 and 12 o'clock plane for horizontally ported pumps, or the 3 and 9 o'clock plane for vertically ported pumps. It is recommended that for the rotor on the drive shaft, the rotor dimple aligns with the drive shaft keyway. Fit rotor nuts onto the shafts. Use a plastic or wooden block between the two rotors to stop them turning and tighten the rotor nuts to the recommended torque value. Using feeler gauges, measure the back clearance behind each rotor lobe and the rotor case. Check clearances are correct as shown in the rotor clearance information in the instruction manual. If incorrect, remove the rotors, rotor case, shafts and front bearings and adjust the shim thickness to give correct clearances. Check all clearances are within specification as shown in the rotor clearance information in the instruction manual. Lightly lubricate with oil both rear shaft diameters. Lightly lubricate the torque locking assemblies with gear oil and fit to the timing gears. Slide timing gear assemblies onto the shafts. To prevent the timing gears from turning, place a soft metal bar in between the gear teeth. Tighten one torque locking assembly to the recommended torque value, allowing rotation of the shaft in the other gear for timing adjustment. Screws should be gradually tightened in a diametrically opposite sequence. Turn the shaft so that the rotors are in new positions as shown. Squeeze the rotors together and using feeler gauges, check the minimum mesh clearance is within specification as shown in the rotor clearance information in the instruction manual. If the minimum mesh clearance is correct, tighten the other torque locking assembly. Screws should be gradually tightened in a diametrically opposite sequence. Confirm timing is correct, and to prevent the timing gears from turning, place a soft metal bar in between the gear teeth and tighten the other timing gear assembly to the recommended torque value. Insert a plastic or wooden block between the two rotors to stop them turning and remove the rotor nuts and rotors and rotor case. Lightly lubricate the shafts and lip seals with compatible lubricant. Carefully slide the lip seals over the shafts and press them into the bearing bore, ensuring that they are not damaged in any way. Refit the rotor case to the bearing housing. Lightly lubricate the spline sealing O-rings with compatible lubricant and fit over the shaft splines to locate against the rotor abutment shoulder. Fit the rotors onto the shafts with both dimpled rotor master lobes in the 6 and 12 o'clock plane for horizontally ported pumps or the 3 and 9 o'clock plane for vertically ported pumps. It is recommended that for the rotor on the drive shaft, the rotor dimple aligns with the drive shaft keyway. Lightly lubricate the rotor nut O-rings with compatible lubricant and fit to the rotors. Fit rotor nuts onto the shafts. Insert a plastic or wooden block between the two rotors to stop them turning, and using a torque wrench, tighten the rotor nuts to the recommended torque value. Lightly smear the rotor case cover O-ring with compatible lubricant and fit into the rotor case. Fit rotor case cover onto the rotor case. Fit the rotor case cover screws, tightening to the recommended torque value. Lightly lubricate canister O-ring with compatible lubricant and fit into the O-ring groove of the bearing housing. Fit the lip seal into the seal retainer that is inside the canister. Smear oil onto the inner lip of the lip seal and carefully slide the canister over the shaft to locate with the bearing housing by aligning the screw holes. Fit and tighten the screws to the recommended torque value. Remove both plastic blanking plugs on the bearing housing to expose screws to be removed. Pour the recommended grease lubricant into the tapped holes. Replace screws using a suitable thread sealant and the plastic blanking plugs. The EasyFit mechanical seal is completely front-loading, without need of removing the rotor case for access or replacement. The seal setting distance is preset. Remove the rotor case cover, rotor nuts and rotors. Extract the rotary seal ring, rotary seal drive ring, wave spring and rotary seal O-ring from the rear of the rotors. Mechanical seals are fragile and extreme care should be taken when handling. Gently ease the stationary seal ring assembly from the rotor case using a suitable lever against the stationary seal drive ring extrusions reachable from the back of the rotor case. Lightly lubricate the L-cup seal with compatible lubricant and fit onto the stationary seal ring. Fit the drive ring to the L-cup seal ring assembly by aligning the flats on the stationary seal drive ring and the stationary seal ring. Gently press the stationary seal ring assembly into the rotor case bore, ensuring that the anti-rotation extrusions in the stationary seal drive ring align with the slots in the rotor case. Fit the wave spring into the rear bore of the rotor. Fit the rotary seal drive ring into the rear bore of the rotor, ensuring that the anti-rotation extrusions locate in the slots in the rotor. Lightly lubricate the rotary seal ring O-ring with compatible lubricant and fit into the rear bore of the rotor. Align the two flats on the rotary seal ring with the drive flats in the rotary seal drive ring. Gently press the rotary seal ring into the rear bore of the rotor through the rotary seal O-ring. Wipe clean the sealing faces with solvent. Refit rotors, rotor nuts and rotor case cover. Drain the seal housing for any liquid and dispose the drained liquid in accordance to existing legislation. Remove the rotor case cover, rotor nuts and rotors. Extract the rotary seal ring, rotary seal drive ring, wave spring and rotary seal O-ring from the rear of the rotors. Mechanical seals are fragile and extreme care should be taken when handling. If only the mechanical seals are to be replaced, a suitable lever can be used to remove the stationary seal assembly from the rotor case. If complete disassembly of the flushed seal components is necessary, remove the rotor case complete with seal housings. Undo the seal housing retention nuts. Remove the seal housings and extract the lip seals from the seal housings. Remove the seal housing O-rings from the rotor case. Lightly lubricate the L-cup seal with compatible lubricant and fit onto the stationary seal ring. Fit the drive ring to the L-cup seal ring assembly by aligning the flats on the stationary seal drive ring and the stationary seal ring. Gently press the stationary seal ring assembly into the rotor case bore, ensuring that the anti-rotation extrusions in the stationary seal drive ring align with the slots in the rotor case. If the rotor case has been removed, press new lip seals into the seal housings and lightly lubricate the seal housing O-rings and fit to the rotor case. Fit seal housings to the rotor case and tighten the seal housing retention nuts to the recommended torque value. Refit the rotor case to the bearing housing. Fit the wave spring into the rear bore of the rotor. Fit the rotary seal drive ring into the rear bore of the rotor, ensuring that the anti-rotation extrusions locate in the slots in the rotor. Lightly lubricate the rotary seal O-ring with compatible lubricant and fit into the rear bore of the rotor. Align the two flats on the rotary seal ring with the drive flats in the rotary seal drive ring. Gently press the rotary seal ring into the rear bore of the rotor through the rotary seal O-ring. Wipe clean the sealing faces with solvent. Refit rotors, rotor nuts and rotor case cover.